And Christina Casotis has been the leader of the charge here in southwestern Pennsylvania. Good to see you again.
Thank you, and welcome to all of our visitors. I'm really excited to have you here and tell you that I spent a lot of time in the Gulf, and I miss being there, so I can't wait to get back.
Yeah, well, if you're starting to travel again, has to be good in your line of work, but at an airport, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, tell us a little bit about what's going on, with the airport here in Pittsburgh, and you really are in the middle of a massive transformation right now.
Right, so Pittsburgh International was really built by U.S. Airways to be a major connecting hub and to serve the region really as a connecting point for travelers, from East Coast to West Coast or from North to South. And then that left in 2004. And for 10 years, the community sort of hemmed and hawed and wondered who else would come in and take advantage of all the space. I was brought in 7 years ago to answer the question, do we have to live with what we've been left with, or is there anything else we can do? And I came from consulting. I had worked with airports around the world and airlines around the world. I spent a lot of time looking at who runs really good businesses in airports. And I can tell you, it's not a surprise to you, that's not necessarily where we see the U.S. as a leader, right? We're looking at other countries, and we're looking at the new airports that were being built in the Gulf, in Asia, in Europe. And my question was, can we sort of operate at the intersection of public utility and going concern? So we have spent quite a bit of time transforming the air service profile, and we did great work in creating an origin and destination airport, and then COVID hit. So we're rebuilding back the service portfolio, but really what we're doing is looking at the entire land mass as an opportunity to really move the economy forward for the region, because as the economy succeeds, the airport succeeds. So in essence, we're creating our own demand.
No, it's fascinating, and it really has become more than just a place where you go to catch a flight. I mean, there's major economic development initiatives underway out there now, especially in speaking to this conference, which is all about manufacturing. You're all about additive manufacturing of all things out by the airport. Tell us about Neighborhood 91.
Yeah, so Neighborhood 91 really is the result of a conversation with the University of Pittsburgh's Chancellor Pat Gallagher and John Barnes, who you're going to hear from later, and Don Hickton, both of whom were really thinking proactively about advanced manufacturing. And we had a conversation around how we, with a lot of land, could operate as a strategic landlord in order to create a cluster strategy for an industry that really needs a home in the US, and that's additive manufacturing. So if you take a look at the ecosystem of additive manufacturing, which is still relatively new to some people, it's expensive, right? Because you have to, you produce in one place and you heat treat in another and you might finish in another. That costs time and it costs money. What if we could put everybody in one neighborhood? What if we could co-locate all parts of the ecosystem and lower the costs through our on-site energy production? We drill for natural gas on our airport. So is there an opportunity to allow for enhancements that are important to that industry, namely resiliency and redundancy? You can't lose a run because the power goes out, right? So could we build a microgrid? Can we lower the cost just through the co-location, as well as other attributes that we could bring to bear? There are 90 neighborhoods in Pittsburgh, so the geography is funny. A lot of hills and mountains. Neighborhoods don't physically expand. So there are 90 neighborhoods still in Pittsburgh, and we thought, well, let's make this the 91st. And we are on our way to achieving that. It's a new line of business for us. I am not a manufacturing expert. I've learned a lot. My team has learned a lot. But what we really want to do is we really want to enable the growth of an industry that we feel is really important, A, for this region, and B, from a global perspective, allows us to compete more effectively in a space that we know is still emerging.
Yeah, what makes it such a good fit for an airport? I mean, you got lots of land out there, because back in the 50s, they bought an awful lot of land to be able to site the airport. So you have space, but why does it make good strategic sense for an airport to be the home for this type of a development?
Well, it makes sense for this airport to be this home to this type of development because we've got a leadership structure that allows for it, right? I mean, we get things done. So it makes sense because, well, first of all, we've got Wabtec manufacturing out there, and they're a $8 billion global company. They're the heir to Westinghouse air brakes, and they are big players in the railroad space, and so they're manufacturing really large-scale parts that they can put on a plane and get out the next day. We have.
So there's a big distribution.
There's a
piece
distribution
really
piece. There's a safety and security piece. I mean, we're patrolled, and it's this is the kind of place where you're not going to worry about, especially with metal powder. We know how to get business done, and we know how, really what we want is we want to see aerospace and defense company manufacturing here, because that will bring more innovation and start to, build on our goal of creating a lot of testing and innovation in industry that, quite frankly, I think needs a lot of innovation, which is the airline and aviation industry. So we see this as part of, like, our energy strategy. How do we use our natural gas resources in order to create a path, right, to lower carbon output and better fuel, a better fuel story for an industry that, quite frankly, is going to get hammered quickly if we don't solve some problems. So, we're looking at our role in a global industry and figuring out how our unique economy can contribute to that and lead in that. So we look at Neighborhood 91, our energy strategy, our cargo strategy, as all being part of the same story.
Yeah, well, and let me talk about the energy strategy. The microgrid has been a fascinating project and really visionary here in Pittsburgh. What are the components of that? And you're the only one who's doing it right now, right?
Yeah, in the world.
In the world,
right.
Okay.
Yeah. So we extract natural gas. So we sit on the Marcellus Shale, which is one of the largest natural gas deposits in the United States, and we drill for natural gas on our property. And my feeling was, well, why aren't we putting it to use to power the airport? So about 4 years ago, we thought, let's build a microgrid and let's use our natural gas to power the airport and have the energy grid as the backup. You can imagine that the local utility wasn't too crazy about that idea. So we said, well, then partner with us, and you can do this with us. And they said, no, that's not going to work. And I'm a big fan of no, because then you figure all the ways around it, right? So we did it. We got it built. We added solar as a component. And we have been energy independent we commissioned it last June, right, as the pandemic and vaccines were sort of really taking effect, and we built it at no cost to us. This was a public-private partnership with industry. We've saved money, we're reducing our carbon footprint, and most importantly, we're guaranteeing that if anything ever happens to the grid, I don't know if you've heard about Texas, but they got a really rocky grid down there. When you take out an airport, and you all know this, anywhere in the world, it's going to affect the system. We saw it in Atlanta, we saw it in LA. So the microgrid for us has been a phenomenal success story, and now we're looking at, can we build one just for Neighborhood 91 in an industry that, quite frankly, has to make sure that there's no downtime.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that and the processes involved in additive, how critical that is. You mentioned cargo, and that's becoming a big thing here as well, and global too, in terms of who you're working with.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, one of the things that happened, most of the global, freight that comes in via aircraft into the United States, especially sort of anything that's going to be distributed east of the Mississippi, is going into New York JFK or Chicago O'Hare. And through the pandemic, what we were seeing and hearing was, 3-week delays. You could get the goods off the plane, but you couldn't get them off the airport for 3 weeks. There were staffing shortages. There was a glut of products being shipped via air that weren't used to being shipped via air. So we said, hold on, we know how to do this. And we flipped on, instead of talking to passenger airlines, which were just trying to stop the bleed, we really started to interact with cargo airlines and said, look, we can be an alternative gateway. Started with some PPE flights. Our ground handler could not staff, so I put my field maintenance team on it, and they unloaded the planes. And then we started to realize what an advantage it was that you could land the plane, get your cargo off and onto the trucks within 2 hours. That was, oh my goodness. So then we saw a number of airlines come in, Qatar, Finnair, there was an airline in India. There were a lot of charters coming in. And as a result, we have recognized, I still want Emirates to move over, so just a plug for that. I've been talking to my friends at Emirates about that. But we have seen that there's a real opportunity for us to grow that international freight capability. We're building 2 new cargo buildings. One is being financed by the private sector. We're building the other one. And we see that as part of, again, a continuum, a story that we can tell around our role in a global industry and what that does for the local economy, but also what does the local set of attributes here, how do those come together in order to actually make a difference in a global economy. So we see this as an iterative loop, and all of these things coming together, they actually do make sense.
Yeah, it's fascinating because some of this has been opportunistic, some of it is strategic, some of it is pandemic-induced pivoting, I guess, adjusting to changing conditions. How do you feel where are you on the journey right now in terms of where you see this by the end of the decade and where you can go?
Yeah, well, I believe really strongly that we have an opportunity. First of all, when I got to the airport 7.5 years ago, it was really just, can we catch up to the renaissance of the community? The airport was a drag. It was, because of the lack of nonstop destinations, it really was preventing business from saying, this is a place where I can locate or grow. Because when you have to connect, I mean, you guys are so blessed in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi in order to, you can get anywhere in the world. And in a community that is not New York and not Chicago, your air service is really going to have so much to do with who's going to decide to, again, expand, grow, or locate in a community. So the first thing we had to do was to flip that on. I feel very strongly that we have an opportunity to lead in this community and to be part of the strategy of where we go in order to build. And I think that is an opportunity also to bring investment in through the lens of aviation, through the lens of additive manufacturing, through the lens of cargo, through the lens, quite frankly, of manufacturing, right? Of making things, shipping things, distributing things, which is something that Pittsburgh has always done. It's in our DNA, right? It's who we are. I'm from Boston, so I had been to Pittsburgh once when
You're talking like a Pittsburgher now.
When they recruited me, so I think there's something to be said for the fact that this discovery that this whole journey of sort of, oh my God, look at everything that's here. I'd say we're right on track, and I expect great things by the end of the decade.
Speaking a little longer term, this whole journey to net zero, it's been part of the conversation last week with the Global Energy Summit, and this week is part of GMIS. Where are you on that journey as an airport as well?
I would say we're at the middle beginning. I mean, look, net zero is a great talking point. I love that everybody has these goals. I would like to know how it's going to show up and how do we build there. So if I listen to some of the folks last week at the Global Clean Energy Action Forum from around the world who have very, very sincere and heartfelt ambitions around, sustainable aviation fuel, green hydrogen, I'm asking, what are you doing in the meantime? What do we do in the meantime? How do we step towards that? And how can we be a little bit more realistic about, do we operate do we operate as we are today and then make a big jump in 15 years? I don't think our industry can afford it. I think we're going to get taxed. I think somebody's going to say in some part of the world, you have to pay for emissions and carbon output, and that will decrease the investment. It will create a negative reinforcing loop, and fewer people will be able to fly. That's what I think will happen if we don't earn our right to grow, which means we have to continually make progress. I'd like to see natural gas be as part of that story. I'd like to see blue hydrogen precede green hydrogen, and I'd like to have conversations about how it actually shows up in infrastructure and who's going to buy it. So there's a lot of great stuff out there. And I want my kid to breathe clean air, and I want all of our children and grandchildren to live in a world where, where we're making the right decisions. But I don't want to pin all of our hopes on what if in 15 years. Like, we got to get there by starting to make logical, natural, and smart decisions that can be built upon.
I love that concept. We have to earn our right to grow, and that
Yeah.
applies to so many industries. You got to be sincere about it, you got to keep at it, but at the same time, you have to recognize we don't have all the answers today.
But doesn't mean you shouldn't do anything today.
Yeah.
Right? That's why we built the microgrid. It's a step. It's not if it were easy, it would be easy, right?
Sure.
But it's not easy. So.
Yeah, I'm just about out of time. Any final thought? We got all our visitors in from all over the place for this conference. What's the takeaway you want them to take home relative to the airport and what's happening out there?
Well, I think that the takeaway is that we understand that we're part of a global infrastructure and supply chain. We are literally the point of distribution as an airport, as all airports are, and we're really looking for partners and opportunities where we can be the place where new technology, new manufacturing, new energy solutions are tested, because we think that there's a natural fit with the assets we have in this community to do that well. And we are looking for global partners to do that with. I mean, we're headed to the UK next week to highlight the breadth and depth of the business community to a UK audience, to speak specifically to our airline partners over there, and to really make sure that Pittsburgh's brand is being represented in a way that will reflect back positively on this community. So I would say that, we're open for business, and we're very happy you're here. And the airport's going to look a lot better in 3 years, I promise. It's a little tired, but we're in the middle of a $1.4 billion renovation project, so I invite you to come back.
Very good. They all got to come back and check it out. Hopefully don't wait 3 years. It'll be every time you come. It'll get better and better. Christina Casadas from the Pittsburgh
Did you have a
Airport.
question, quickly?
Oh, was there? I'm sorry. I didn't see you out there. No, sure. We'll squeeze you in.
That's
Absolutely.
okay. Good morning. Thanks, Bill. Thank you, Christina. My name is Ray Milham. I'm a high-tech executive. I moved here from the Bay Area 9 years ago. I definitely thank you for your leadership, Christina.
We're getting that second San Francisco flight, so hang on, okay? Go ahead.
We need a lot more
Yeah, I
flights,
know.
but thank you really for your leadership and your vision and all that. The question is about the new terminal. I was talking to some of your team, Tyler, and the team yesterday. Can you tell us a little bit more about the new terminal? Thank you.
Yeah. So actually, Abu Dhabi was built with an X at its core, right? If you think about the airside terminal and where all the gates are, it's an X design. Well, Pittsburgh did that 30 years ago, and it was built, again, to be a very large, important connecting hub for an airline that is no longer in business. And so the goal was to get people from gate B26 to gate A8. Those people never touched the curb. So the way that you take care of the local market is you sort of separate them, right? And there's a landside terminal, and you guys rode a train. The reason you had to ride a train is because the people in Pittsburgh, that's who the train was for, not for the connecting passengers. Well, the connecting passengers have been gone since 2004. The facility is 30 years old Saturday, and we had to make a decision. Do we rehab all the old systems, or do we rebuild? And why take down the part that works, which is the X? That's very effective. So we're going to do what Abu Dhabi has done, and we're actually going to put the landside terminal into that X and connect it right to the gate area. Restructure the whole roadway system, build a new parking garage and surface parking. And the goal here is I'm a big fan of technology, and in this community with CMU, we're very lucky to be at the forefront of a lot of great thinking and a lot of great companies we're working with, but it has to be in service of a travel experience that works. What I will not do is create a terminal around technology and then figure out what we can offer services. We are looking at how do people travel? What do they need when they are traveling? How do we make sure that it's accessible to a wider variety of people in a in a way that works for people so that we can make technology decisions and, right, deliver a transformative travel experience. So we broke ground a year ago. Actually, the airlines in our country have to approve our large capital projects, and they did in the middle of the pandemic. And we're on track and on budget to open in early 25, and it will be a game changer, I would say, for the region. Thank you. Thanks, I get to say that.
I'm glad you got the plug in, and
Yeah.
it's a really important investment, and hopefully it'll be a signature for our entire region as a place to do business. Christina Casotis from the airport,
Thank
you so much.
Thanks.
Really appreciate
Great.
it.
Bill?